What's up, y'all? James Gunn has finally dropped Chapter 1 of his new DC slate called Gods and Monsters, and I'm a little late to the party because I've been working. I'm on my lunch break right now, so I'm going to do a quick reaction to this and give you my thoughts, because it seems like from the internet buzz, it's going to be really crazy and amazing, and of course with James Gunn, it's going to be a little bit wacky, so I'm ready to see what deep cuts he's going to be pulling. Let's get into it.
Hey everybody, I'm James Gunn. I'm the co-CEO
Hello,
of
James Gunn.
DC Studios. So as many of you know, DC has been disconnected in film and television for a long time. And it's one of, our jobs, mine and Peter's, is to come in and make sure the DCU is
It's a big job
in film, television, gaming,
and
animation. That the characters are consistent, played by the same actors, and it works within one story.
Okay.
And if something is outside of that, like Matt Reeves' Batman or Todd Phillips' Joker or Teen Titans Go, that it is clearly labeled as DC Elseworlds.
Okay. DC Elseworlds. Okay, so we're already establishing out the gate Robert Pattinson Batman, Teen Titans Go, Joker. These are all going to be still standalone stories while still building out this new DC slate. I like that. I think the strong point of DC is really their individual stories that don't tie into a greater universe. So I'm happy that he's establishing that out the gate. Keeps the fans of the other movies pretty satisfied, I think.
Side of the mainstream DCU continuity. Now, Peter and I have gotten pretty lucky in terms of the 4 projects that are coming out over the next year. First, we have Shazam, Fury of the Gods.
Looks
Shazam
horrible.
has always been off kind of in his own part of the DCU, so he connects very well. That moves directly into The Flash, a fantastic movie that I really love that resets the entire DC universe.
Okay, pause. 1, confirming The Flash is resetting the DC universe, that's pretty big. But I love that he said it's a great and fantastic movie, and he didn't say anything about Shazam 2. I think that doesn't bode very well for how Shazam's going to be perceived, but it makes me understand why they are ride or die for this Flash movie to come out. Not only is it apparently amazing, if James Gunn thinks it's amazing, then that also kicking off the new DC universe, there's a lot riding on the Flash to be amazing, especially with all the reshoots that they've said, but that does not get me hyped for Shazam 2 at all.
Blue Beetle, a fantastic film about a kid who's a marvelous part of the DCU, and then into Aquaman 2, which leads directly into our next few projects, which I'm going to tell you about now.
Okay, so then Blue Beetle is the first movie after The Flash, which kicks off the DC universe, so I'm interested to see how that plays out, because that kind of makes Blue Beetle, that's a very important movie now. We kind of get to see the tone of the new universe, kinda. Aquaman is somehow still in the universe. I'm confused still, kinda.
Peter and I, along with a group of very talented writers, have started to map out an 8 to 10 year plan of what DC Studios will be
10 years.
In film, television, and gaming. This first chapter is called Gods and Monsters. Now, this, what I'm about to tell you, is a part of the first chapter. It's not the entire first chapter. The first project is Creature Commandos. Creature Commandos is an animated series. I've written all the episodes. Something we're going to do that's a
I knew James was going to pull out some oddball. This was like horror movie monsters.
Usually having the same actor play their voice as who plays them in live action. The next project
Okay, that's a good point, though. The animation is still going to be incorporated in this universe. I like that idea. It kind of has like Marvel What If vibes to it, but it seems like it will have a lot more stakes. So if the voices of the characters are still going to be playing them in live action, that's pretty cool. I don't know much about those characters at all. Looks like we had Weasel from Suicide Squad maybe right there, of course. But don't know much about that. Interested to see how it goes, though. It looked pretty interesting. I'm always down for some horror monster stuff. If it's rated R, I'm all for it.
This is a story of Amanda Waller, played by Viola Davis. Viola Davis is going to team up with members of Team
Now that I'm on board for.
And this is a story that's been created by Crystal Henry, who did Watchmen, and Jeremy Carver, who created Doom Patrol. It is a fantastic story that's out of this world, and I can't wait for people to see it. Okay, next up is...
Okay, so Peacemaker confirmed still in this universe. I do like that they're keeping Viola Davis as Waller, because she's perfect. Interested to see how that ties into everything, though. I love they're using comic panels for this. I think that's a really good way to kind of give the vibe to what James is seeing in his head. Excited for Waller. Needs to be R-rated as well, though. If we're keeping in the DC like Peacemaker universe, very R-rated. So I'm gonna have faith in James to kind of like nudge Warner Brothers into more R-rated territory, because DC has more mature content over Marvel anyway.
This is a big one, the true beginning of the DCU. This is called Superman Legacy. This is being written by me.
Of course.
I'm in the middle of it. I'm having a great time doing it. And Superman will be released into theaters July 11th, 2025. Okay, the next thing is
July 11th, 2025. Superman. Okay. Written by James Gunn. I think that's going to be a passion project for him. I know he's in his bag on the deep cut stuff, but I feel like he has really been waiting for his Superman movie. You know, he was executive producer. He basically created Brightburn, if you've seen that movie, which is just evil Superman. So I think he's been waiting to get his hands on Superman for a while now. So the fact that he's writing it, he might even direct it, but I doubt it. But if he's writing it, we're at least going to have a pretty good story, I would assume. I'll be excited to see where that goes, depending on how they portray the character. I know there's a lot of people upset about Henry Cavill leaving, so we'll see.
Is a big premiere HBO television series called Lanterns. This is a story of a couple of Green Lanterns, John Stewart and Hal Jordan, and we have a few other Lanterns peppered in there, but this is really a terrestrial-based TV show, which is almost like True Detective with a couple of Green Lanterns
True Detective.
Space cops watching over Precinct Earth. In it, they discover a terrifying mystery that ties into our larger story of the DCU. Next is a big movie.
This is my most anticipated already. I don't care what the rest of this could be, all foobar shit for all I care. That just got me hype. When you put Lanterns in the same conversation with True Detective, you have John Stewart and Hal Jordan. While I think Hal Jordan is amazing, and you have a lot of comics people that love Hal Jordan, if you really want to get fans excited, John Stewart, especially if you like the cartoons like me and you were integrated into the DC universe as a kid through the cartoons, John Stewart's kind of everybody's favorite from my generation of comics fans and readers and stuff. So if we have like Hal Jordan as the veteran cop, and you have John Stewart kind of as like the new cop / Lantern, you know, and they're kind of figuring this stuff out together. John supposedly having one of the most, you know, intricate and complicated constructs versus, you know, Hal Jordan being like it's all about willpower. Having a little buddy cop TV series through HBO, and they just throw a ton of money at it, and it's going to be the True Detective of superhero shows. Take all my money. It looks amazing. I'm glad that they are incorporating John Stewart. That's my number one takeaway from that, especially because you're establishing that Hal Jordan has already been a Green Lantern. Doesn't really seem like they would do the origin of Hal Jordan and John Stewart simultaneously. So establishing the DC world as already existing instead of throwing a bunch of origins at us, that's the vibe I'm getting with that announcement.
Called The Authority. The Authority is a passion project of mine. It's based on
The
Authority. Wildstorm characters we are now bringing into the DCU.
He seems pretty passionate about this one.
With all of our primary DCU characters. The Authority are a group of superheroes who think the world is broken and they want to fix it by any means necessary. I think it's a very different look at superheroes. We're doing a television series.
Okay, I know nothing about The Authority, but based off that description, it's giving me like the DC's version of like some Guardians of the Galaxy type stuff, like an obscure team that people don't really know about, but that he obviously really loves. And because he loves it and has that passion, he wants to shine a little light on it. From what he just described, that seems like a more R-rated feature. You know, they're taking crime into their own hands kind of vibe. So The Authority, I know nothing about it. I'm willing to check it out, though. Sounds cool. If James is that passionate about it, we know that when he has passion in a project, that it just explodes tenfold. So if he's that passionate about it, I'm all for it.
It's called Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is the story of Paradise Island, usually known as Themyscira, which is the birthplace of Wonder Woman. It's almost like Game of Thrones with Westeros, but with all of the inhabitants of Paradise Island.
Okay, so we're pitching True Detective with Green Lantern. We're pitching Game of Thrones Westeros with Wonder Woman. But he said that was like kind of a prequel thing, right? So Wonder Woman's not even involved. So Themyscira, you know, getting into the more like brutality of the Amazon warriors and kind of what they're going through could be interesting. You know, I don't know much about that comic run. I've heard some good things about it. But if Wonder Woman's not involved, or if it's not like true Wonder Woman, it makes me wonder where that takes place in the timeline. I know Themyscira has been around a long time, so I guess you can kind of jump around. But it's also supposed to be a TV series, so I could see it not featuring Wonder Woman, but giving us a small introduction to, like, it's called Gods and Monsters, this new chapter of the DC Universe. So if we get introduced to, like, Zeus and Ares and Athena and, you know, all the Greek gods that kind of play into all this, I think that could be a really interesting show. If they're comparing it to Game of Thrones, they're going to throw some money at that.
The introduction of the DCU's Batman is The Brave and
Whoa.
The Brave and the Bold is the story of Batman and his actual son, Damian Wayne.
Damian.
Based on Grant Morrison's great comic book run. Damian Wayne is my favorite Robin.
Okay.
He's a little assassin who Batman tries to get in line, and so this is the story of the two of them and the beginning of sort of the Bat family in the DCU.
I'm not as huge of a fan of Damian Wayne personally, but what excited me, what he just said, Bat family. If that means we already have an established Bat family, we have an established Batman, that means Dick Grayson's Nightwing, you know, Tim Drake is running out there probably as Red Robin, hopefully Jason Todd as Red Hood out there already, you know, that means we already have a pre-established history with the Joker, we have a pre-established history with the Bat family, maybe even Barbara Gordon as Oracle now, if we're leading to this point. I think this is amazing because it seems like every Batman incarnation right now just keeps getting broodier and broodier, and at some point it's going to just be Batman silent the entire movie, and I'm not looking for that. I think introducing a Bat family and it being Bruce Wayne's son has a little bit more emotion to it, to the point where you can have Batman be a lot more emotional and interactive in his conversation / with his character performance. You know, I could see that Batman working with the Justice League and being a lot more team player-esque instead of I do everything solo, you know, I'm only here for Gotham kind of thing. Batman being more world-based with the Bat family holding down Gotham while Batman's working with the Justice League. So I am excited to see where that goes, even though I'm not as excited for Damian Wayne, unless they pull it off. But that also means Talia al Ghul and stuff, and that means the Batman lore is already pretty established so far if we're starting off with The Brave and the Bold. So I'm cool with that, as long as Robert Pattinson Batman is still getting his shine in his own little Matt Reeves universe.
Next up is a TV series called Booster Gold. Booster Gold is one of comics' really popular cult heroes. He is
Booster Gold that's a win.
He's a loser from the future who uses future technology to come back to present day.
Live action TV, that's good.
So that people will love him. It is basically the superhero story of imposter syndrome on an HBO Max series.
Booster Gold is one of my favorite, like, B-tier heroes. He was one of my favorites in Justice League Unlimited. I don't know as much about him from the comic books. I know Dallas is really excited for Booster Gold, and I think that's going to be one that, if done very well, could actually change his popularity in the comics to be from a B-tier hero to maximum A-tier, S-tier type hero and get a lot more love than what he gets right now. The idea that someone goes back in time with awesome technology gives me like some Kang vibes, since we're kind of in like a Marvel Kang timeline right now, but like the loser version of Kang that just wants to be a cool superhero, but in his time it's not as cool because all the technology is there. So I like the idea that they're giving Booster Gold a little bit of shine here. I wonder when that comes out.
One of my favorite comic book series from last year was Tom King's run on Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And so we're going to turn that into a big science fiction epic film.
Oh, shit.
Now, Superman is a guy who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents. Where Supergirl in this story, she is a character who was raised on a chunk of Krypton. She watched everybody around her perish in some terrible way.
A lot more tragic, for sure.
Jaded character. And that brings me to Swamp Thing.
Okay.
Last thing we're gonna...
He is really talking fast pace here. I love that. That Supergirl story, while I've never been the biggest fan of Supergirl, what I do love about that is that version of Supergirl is actually being a lot more violent and bloody, to take on kind of the weight of what's going on in that story. If I remember correctly, she's basically escorting another character that has watched her family be killed, and Supergirl is kind of taking on the brunt of all the trauma by handling a lot of the heavy lifting, is what I'll say. So if Supergirl is going to be a lot more bloody, it kind of gives us what we've been begging for with Superman for a long time, but Superman really isn't that character. There's not really, I mean, unless we get like an Injustice movie, I don't see Superman becoming a bad guy and being super violent or anytime soon. So if this is our way of being like, well, what if a Kryptonian did let loose? I think that would be a really amazing kind of like boost to Supergirl, because I do think she gets slept on a lot, because she's basically just girl Superman. So that's a win.
Brings me to Swamp Thing, the last thing we're going to talk about. A very
Swamp
dark
Thing
horror story in the origins of the monster who is Swamp Thing.
This better be a horror movie,
totally
R-rated.
The rest of the DCU, it will still feed into the rest of the stories. Anyway, those are the stories that I can tell you about right now.
That's it?
I've loved the DC characters since I was a child. They're incredibly important to me. I knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something very different. One of the things that's very important for me in all of these movies and TV series is that the director's vision and the vision of the writers and all of the creators is unique and something special. Storytelling is always king. That's all that matters to us. And I want to be true to those.
I love that he said that. That's very much a screenwriter's mindset put into the position of an executive. I like that in the forefront, even though he's got some more obscure stuff on here like the Authority and the whatever Commandos at the beginning. Even if it's going to be a little obscure, if the writing is good and we have the story up front and we're not as worried about connective universes, because I don't see how half of this is going to connect to each other. If that's where we're taking this mindset, is we're just going to make good stuff and we'll let the connective tissue work itself out later, I think James is really going about this in a smart direction. He's learned a lot from Kevin Feige, but I feel like Kevin isn't a writer, he's a producer, so James Gunn is kind of putting a meld of everything in between here, focusing on the writing. I'm glad he said that. That brings a lot of happiness and faith in my eyes.
Stories. I want to be true to you guys and really give you something different than you've ever seen before. Anyway, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you watching. I hope this was exciting for you, because it's really exciting for me, and I can't wait to start to dive into these stories with you guys on this grand adventure. Thank you so much.
Couldn't have said it better myself. I think that's a really awesome slate of stuff to come out. I'm most excited for the Lantern show. When you put anything in the same conversation as True Detective meets Green Lantern, and you're introducing Jon Stewart, I cannot imagine how amazing of a show that's going to be. Even though usually Green Lantern has a more like whimsical, lighthearted tone, and if it's going to be like True Detective, it's going to be brutal and scary. So who knows what that's going to be. But I feel like, James coming from a horror background, I do think he's willing to embrace kind of the darker side of comic books, even though, Guardians of the Galaxy has been pretty lighthearted and colorful for the most part. But what we've seen in Suicide Squad and what we've seen in Peacemaker, and if you've seen Slither and some of his other stuff like Brightburn, I think you can kind of see where he wants to dabble into the darker tones of the comic book world. And I think this might be the direction that they're going. I am interested to see The Flash now, if James is like praising The Flash after everything we've heard with Ezra Miller, but I love that he kind of shit on Shazam. Batman Brave and the Bold, that's exciting for me, but they're gonna, I hope James knows that we're gonna have to do something different with Batman to keep us excited about the Batman character. It's gonna get to a point where these Batman stories and films, we're going to see it so many different times that it's going to get stale. So involving Damian Wayne, which we haven't seen in live action in movies, and involving more of the Bat family and established Batman, I think that's a really smart move. And what they kind of try to do with Ben Affleck Batman, but kind of fumbled to do because they didn't involve Robin, and they gave us weird Joker. And, you know, the sins of the past, hopefully we learn from that. And I think James knows enough about comic books and has enough passion about it to know not to release shitty stuff. So I'm super excited for this. Let me know what you guys thought. If you thought this slate was amazing, if you are excited, what's the thing you're most excited for? I think just in general, having animation and live action and video games crossover all into itself is amazing, because that brings the connective tissue of all the worlds colliding together. Except for comic books. Apparently comic books still stay in its own lane, which I think is funny. But I think James is the right man for the job here. Him and Peter Safran, that's really good. He named a lot of comic writers that are still going to be a part of this. He named a lot of comic panels and stories. I think if you're pulling straight from comic books, that's kind of been the disconnect that most viewers, like, if you don't know the comic books, you don't know the movies, and you don't really know to get hype. So I'll say that's the only thing I fear for this, is if you don't know the Authority like me, if you don't know the Commandos like me, then you're kind of less hype about those projects. So you're really going to have to sell us on why we should like it, which I think you can, because Peacemaker was amazing and did really well, even though nobody knew who the hell Peacemaker was. But it was also James Gunn and John Cena, so you kind of had some star power there. So depending on how they play this, I think there's a lot to rebuild with DC. We're going to have to see how they handle the Flash and the restart of the universe, and we'll see how Blue Beetle and Aquaman go. But no matter what, Lanterns, Batman Brave and the Bold, and Booster Gold are my 3 most excited things. So let me know what you guys think, and we'll see you in the next one. Peace.